Without further ado, let me introduce you to the assassin, the telephone assassin, Anthony Stears, everybody. Woo, woo, woo!
Good fella. Who can remember when the only game we had on our phone was something called Snake? Remember that? Oh, that was a good game, wasn't it? This was back when text messaging was just taking off. Seemed like it was a bit of a simpler time back then, but now they're not just mobile phones, they're now smartphones. Apparently they make us really smart because we can ask Siri anything. We now have access to apps, gadgets, games, accessories, all kinds of things on our phone. In fact, do you know what the most common use for the phone is? Time. Checking the time. Maybe that's why Apple made the watch. Possibly. You hear some horror stories, but the great thing about using social media in particular is that it allows you to create amplification of your message, and you can bounce a message right around the world, and if you've got the right followers and people retweeting you, a few little clicks and suddenly thousands of people have seen what it is you do. Okay? Problem that I have is how many of you wander around with a phone in your pocket or your bag, yet sometimes choose to send an email instead? Anybody guilty of spending a bit long crafting that perfect email to send? Yeah? Anybody choose to send an email if you've got to deliver some bad news? Yeah? Really? Anybody got any clients who you would rather email with rather than talk to? Yeah? This is what I try and get people to stop doing, is stop hiding behind emails and social media and have some conversations. And the reason that I say that is, for me, I work with a lot of sales teams, and generally the best excuse I tend to hear, okay, is, well, I've emailed them, because that means it's off your desk. And I have to be honest with you, what I tend to do when it comes to emails is I use emails to create a paper trail of the conversations that I've already had. Okay? So I've got a thing that I do every time I go to write an email. If I was going to write Richard an email, I was going to send him one a couple of days ago, literally opened it up, put, "Hi Richard," and then I phoned him. Because I can either leave him a voicemail and send him a one-liner, or he'll answer and I don't even need to send that email. Okay? Or what quite often happens to me is I will send an email to somebody asking 3 questions. It will take a week to respond, and you'll get 2 answers. That happened to you as well? Yeah, it's not just me. In fact, anybody, do you know how many emails you delete every day? Yeah? Anybody else think Groupon have it in for them? Yeah? Okay. I am the telephone assassin. Please don't let the word assassin scare you. This is not aggressive sales tactics. Most people tend to assume that I'm a sales trainer. I do a lot of sales sessions, but technically I would put myself into the category of customer service training. And the reason that I say that is that I don't teach people how to sell. I show them how to help their customers to buy. Okay? Anybody ever had to do a psychometric test for a job interview? Yes? Last time I did one of them was about 14 years ago when I had a proper job, or I was employed, and the results came back from the psychometric test and said, I can't close. I can't do a sales close. I remember being told that when I went back for the second interview, and she went, "Oh, psychometric test is in, it says here you can't close." And I went, "Oh, okay." She went, no, last time you were here for the interview, you filled out a questionnaire. It says here you can't do a sales close. And I went, "Ooh, fascinating." And she kind of looked at me and she went, "Well, this is a sales job. You're going to have to say more than fascinating, so come on." And I went, "All right, well, have you seen my CV?" And she looked down and it was in front of her and she said, "Yes." And I went, "And have you read it?" And she looked at me like my older sister does, as if to go, "This better be going somewhere." She went, "Yes, yes." And I said, "And hopefully you noticed I broke all the sales records in my last company that I worked for." And she said, "Yes, that's the reason you got invited back." And I said, "Well, I'll be honest with you, your psychometric test is right. I'm no good at closing, I'm rubbish at selling, I'm just really good at helping customers to buy." And with that, she smiled at me, swiveled in her chair, tore up this piece of paper and went, "That was a waste of time, you start on Monday." And the reason I tell people that is that you don't have to be an aggressive salesperson to be good at sales. You just have to be passionate about what it is you're selling and take an approach of helping people who want to buy. So I'm going to share quite a few things today. I speak at 100 miles an hour, just to pre-warn you. So I am around all day, so if there's anything that you want to talk about, obviously we're doing a Q&A, but I'm hoping that about 90% of the stuff I talk about you will already know. and 70% you probably already use. So I'm kind of hoping that most of you are going to walk away feeling quite reassured you're doing a lot of the right stuff. Okay? However, fingers crossed there'll be one or two little gems in there that will make a bit of difference to you. Okay? That will make you a bit more confident to pick up the phone and will help you convert more of those leads or inquiries, or even do some cold calling. Which nobody loves doing. So I want to start off with two very quick things. I don't know if many of you guys have had much sales training or been on sales training courses. The first thing I always like to address is that when people use the telephone, quite often people like to have a script if they're kind of new. So I need to ask, have any of you ever been called by somebody who you can tell is reading a script?
Yes.
Yes? I heard a bit of a laugh there. Do you like it when people do that? No? How does it make you feel? Thank you. That was not very good, is what he said there. It tends to feel pretty insincere. And the reason that I have an issue with scripts is that sometimes you'll get a good bit of patter and you'll learn your kind of elevator pitch. But typically what most people do is they don't tend to learn a script like an actor would, so it doesn't flow out of their mouth. They tend to keep it out in front of them as a prompt, and it then means that half of them read it, and I think pretty much everybody acknowledged you can tell if somebody's reading. Okay? Now, next problem with the script is the person that you have phoned has not been given their copy of the script. Okay? And what usually happens is they will say something totally random that you weren't expecting, and go off script, and if you try and bring it back to the script, you will distort the flow of the conversation, which will set off alarm bells that say they're up to something here. They're probably in sales. Okay? The next thing is there's a phrase about sales being a bit of a numbers game, but I don't know if you've heard this, but each no is one step closer to your next yes. Anybody heard that phrase before? Each no is one step closer to your next yes? Okay, that is rubbish. Okay? Two no's on the trot mean you're either phoning the wrong people or you're taking the wrong approach. So you're either phoning people who don't really need your services, or you're being like a bull in a china shop and they're really not buying into it. Okay? What a lot of people do is they get given a script and told that each no is one step closer to your next yes, and they phone a list of 100 people, of which 99 will hang up or tell them to go away in the hope that one of them says yes. And usually what they do is they'll start to dial, okay, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this when you've had to make calls for yourself, you'll start to dial and your heart will begin to race, okay, and then it rings and your mouth goes really dry, okay, and before you get a chance to do the please go to voicemail prayer, they answer, okay, and typically what you tend to do is you hear this short intake of breath where people will go, hello there, this is my name and this is my company, and I'm going to try and speak really quickly so you can't interrupt me and tell me to go away. I'm going to hit you with a feature followed by a benefit in the hope that I get all the way to the end of my pitch, and if you haven't hung up, there's a really small chance that you might say yes. Okay? This is what I would refer to as premature elaboration. Okay? This is where you blurt a pitch over anybody who answers the phone. Most of us tend to do it to a gatekeeper, which pretty much says, this is a cold call, don't let me through. So I just want people to take a bit of a step back and think that actually sales will always be a numbers game. I'm not arguing about that, okay? But it's not about getting past the no's or around the objections. It is about capitalizing on the conversations people are ready to have, okay? Sales is a numbers game, but it's about capitalizing on the conversations people are ready to have. Have you ever phoned somebody who you can tell is in the middle of something or is not listening? Yes? It's annoying, right? Yeah, ever phoned anybody who you can tell is in a bad mood? Yeah? If you can tell somebody's in a bad mood, get out of that conversation really quickly. If somebody's having a bad day, it's not your fault, but you might bear the brunt of it if you're caught on the telephone with them. Okay? So they're things that I tell people not to do, but there's really basically three really simple steps to any successful call that I always share with everybody, okay, just to make things kind of really simple, because a lot of people seem to overthink what's happening on the telephone. The three phases, I'll tell you very quickly, are you need to start off by building rapport. Usually this is done with really good manners and a bit of research, but once you build rapport and they like you, you can move into the next stage where you can start to establish your credibility. Okay, you establish your credibility by using case studies. I'm going to go into that in more detail. Once you've established that you are credible at what you do, what you then need to do is create urgency. Okay, or as marketing people like to call it, a call to action. Okay, they are the three phases. With certain people, you've already got a rapport and a relationship with them if they're an existing client, and maybe even credibility too. But you've got to move through those 3 stages, because that's the emotional journey you need to take people through to go, I now know who you are, I now know you're good at what I do, I now trust you enough to give this a go. I want to work with you. Nice and simple, right? So, the first point I always make is outbound phone calls, regardless of whether this is a cold call and you're prospecting, okay, or whether or not you could even be responding to an inbound inquiry. But outbound phone calls, in my mind, should feel like you are dropping off a pizza menu. Okay, feel like you're dropping off a pizza menu. So just to explain that is, I'm assuming you all get takeaway menus put through your letterbox on a weekly basis? Yeah? And you get all different types. Has anybody ever had them come and knock on your door while they're dropping off the menu and go, hi there, can I take your order? No? They don't do that? Why don't they do that? Is that really rude, do you think? Perhaps a little bit presumptuous? And the thing is I give that analogy to a lot of people and they laugh as if to go, of course they don't do that, that's just rude. And then I have to sit with sales teams and go, now let's listen to your call recording and let's see how it came across. Because that's how a lot of people come across on the phone. And this is that whole launching into this premature elaboration thing of just launching into what you think sounds really good. Okay? What typically happens, who hasn't got as much patience and would just hang up on somebody if they were rude? Yeah? Who would wait for them to finish speaking and then say, could you send me an email? Yeah? That's quite a common thing. Anybody find that happens to them? When they speak to somebody and they're reaching out, that they'll just, basically one of the first few things people will say is, could you just send me an email? Yeah? It's generally a polite way of saying, I'm too polite to hang up on you, but if I could zap up more of your time and you send me information that I don't really want right now, then if it makes you go away, then please feel free to send me something. Okay? I'm joking, but this whole thing with the manners and the dropping off a pizza menu, whenever I drop off a pizza menu, all I do is try and get on people's radar, and I assume that they're probably not looking for my services right now. So this is what I mean. So if I was going to reach out to somebody, I do a lot of training, I do a lot of speaking, but if I was reaching out on the training side of things, I would speak to a HR manager, a training manager, an L&D director, okay, depending on the company. And I would reach out to them and say, hi there, I'm known as the Telephone Assassin. I'd like to send you a free copy of my book so you can see what I talk about. But I deliver a specialist type of training. Am I safe in assuming you're not looking for training right now? I always say I'm assuming you're not looking for training right now, because that's the most common objection to any business is, that's great, but we're not looking for that right now. Okay, and the problem with objections is you shouldn't really do objection handling directly or head on, particularly on a first call, because objection handling is arguing. It's basically saying, they're saying, I don't want to do that because of this reason, and you're saying, well, that's not a good enough reason because of this. So if you do overcome an objection, you tend to win the battle and they end up feeling that you're in control of the conversation. But I would reach out, and by saying to them, I'm assuming you're not looking for this service right now, I make it okay for them to say, actually, no, we're not. And they realise straight away that I'm just dropping off a pizza menu, I'm not trying to take an order, which tends to put most people in a nice, comfortable place where they'll say to you, actually, no, we're not looking at it right now, but our contract is coming up for a renewal at the end of the year, or actually we're going through a mass recruitment thing at the moment and we're going to start looking in a couple of months' time. Okay? If you sell insurance, anybody in here sell insurance? Hoping not. Yeah? You got one? Sell insurance? You look like you're falling asleep there in the world of insurance. If you meet a new potential prospect as an insurer, what's the one crucial bit of information that is really useful to know?
How many debtors they've got and who went insolvent.
Yeah? You want to go into that much detail? Yeah? Oh, you sell trade insurance. Okay, that's cool. So for you. But to be honest with you, let's say you already know that they buy trade insurance. What would be really handy is to know when is their renewal date. Do you agree?
Depends on what,
Yeah? Well, let's ask the room. If you have bought insurance in the last, let's say, 3 months, and you've got 9 more months before your insurance is due to renew, who wants to talk about insurance?
Cat movies I want to talk about.
What's that? So the point I'm trying to make is that if you can speak to somebody who you can qualify as actually needing the type of insurance that you offer, the really useful thing to know is actually at what time are you likely to be hungry for my services, and can I then see if I can help provide a quote or give you some more information or assess if you're open to exposed to risk. Pretty much it tends to be the strategy with insurance. Okay? So a lot of this stuff is dropping off your pizza menu, is getting on people's radar so that hopefully you qualify a potential future need and you then give them a reason to remember you, which moves on to the next phase, which is how you build your credibility. So it doesn't matter if you are a lawyer or a landscaper, the principles of being effective on the phone work exactly the same, but the best way to perfect your pitch is to share a success story people can relate to. Share a success story people can relate to. So this is using case studies and testimonials, okay, and sharing them with people who are similar to those kinds of people. So who's got lots of testimonials on their website? Yeah. I've got a quick question for you. Have any of you got a client who you've done some work for recently, who you know is very happy with the work that you've done, who hasn't written you a testimonial yet? Could you put your hand up if you can think of just one person? Could you write their name down on your notes? Because I'm going to get you to try and phone them on the lunch break. I'm going to tell you exactly what to say, okay? But a lot of people feel a bit bad about asking for testimonials and recommendations and referrals from people. So anybody feel like that in the room? Is the reason that we don't ask all the time? Yes, I'm getting a few little nods. If you are a bit nervous about asking for a testimonial, the best time, there's a little verbal cue that people will give you to tell you that they're happy to do it. At the end of once you've delivered whatever you've done or whatever problem you fixed, okay, at the end of the conversation, people will typically say, thank you. Okay? This is a verbal cue of gratitude towards you for what it is you've done. This is the perfect time to ask for something back in return of value. So that's where I would typically always turn around and say, oh, you're very welcome. I'm really glad that you found this so useful. If you've been happy working with me, would you mind just sharing a couple of lines of what it's like to work with me so I could share that with other potential customers? Okay? If I'm really worried, then I might just turn around to them and say, oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad you've enjoyed the service. Could I just ask, would you be happy to be a reference if I speak to another company similar to you if they want to talk to some past clients? I've not had anybody say no yet. Okay. The reason why I want you all to phone these people is what you'll end up finding is a large chunk of them, I reckon at least 25%, not only will say, yes, I will write you a testimonial, but they will even say, and what do you want it to say? Do you want to write it for me? Okay. I haven't got a problem with you doing that for people, just don't over-egg it, would be my one tip. And my one bit of advice is do not ever have not even one fake testimonial or recommendation. Because if you have one fake one, it basically casts a shadow of doubt over all the real ones that you've got. Now, what most people tend to do is name drop. Anybody got like one or two really big clients that you've worked with in the past? So name dropping is usually for your benefit. This is how you show off and go, yes, I've worked with BT, I've worked with Microsoft, Lathwaites. Yes, I can list lots of big names that you will have heard of, but what it tends to do is make me feel good and intimidate smaller businesses that then kind of go, oh, okay, so you don't work with companies like me then. Okay? Now, don't get me wrong, name dropping can be useful at the right time to almost demonstrate that you can handle capacity, for example, but really what people want to connect with is people like them that you've already helped. So if you are collecting up testimonials, there's a couple of tags or things that I would be putting on them, so I'd be having a bit of a file of these. The first one is usually done by industry. So if, for example, you've got a client, you do, I don't know, print services, and one of your clients or a couple of your clients is they're accountants, little accountancy firms, you've got some great work with them, you've got great testimonials. Okay? What you really want to do is mark that up as accountancy, because if you talk to another accountant and they inquire, you want to be able to say, well, look, here's what a couple of other accountants say about us that we've been working with recently. Okay? The next tag that you always want on your testimonial is the job title of the person who's written it. Because sometimes you may not have the same industry, but the same job title will quite often have a similar view or values in what they're writing. So for example, if I'm talking to an L&D director, learning and development director, I want to share what another L&D director has been writing. Same as if they're a HR manager, because a HR manager is going to say something very different from a sales manager. Okay, there is no point in me sharing what a HR manager is saying about me to a sales manager, because they really want to know about the hard, cold stats, the conversions, what's actually going to happen. Okay. So anybody worried about phoning a client about asking for a testimonial? No? Well, for those people who put their hand up, can you just put them up really clear just so everybody can see who wrote a name down? Yeah? Oh, it's half the number of people who could think of people. I'm just curious. The reason is I want you to phone them on the lunch break and just say to them, look, I've been working with a new marketing chap. He's told me I need to get my LinkedIn profile up to date. Would you mind either copying and pasting that lovely thank you email you sent me 3 months ago onto LinkedIn? Or if they haven't even done that, would you mind sharing a few lines of what it's like to work with me? Okay? There is a particular reason why I want my testimonials on LinkedIn. Okay? Hello.
My favourite new client isn't on LinkedIn.
One of your favourite clients?
What if my favourite new client,
Yep.
Esther, isn't on LinkedIn?
Okay, so I've got a client who came off of LinkedIn. She wrote me a lovely testimonial. It was for a massive law firm, and she came off of LinkedIn because she was being targeted because she was a HR director. She wrote me a testimonial as an email. Okay, and the title of it was "The HR Director of the largest law firm outside of London says," and then she wrote a load of stuff. And what she basically said to me is, I'm happy for you to splash that around online and across the social media platforms and on your website, but I don't want to advertise my name because I don't want to put a target on my back. But she said, if you ever talk to another professional services or a legal firm, you can tell them exactly who I am. I'll even take a phone call and tell them how good you are.
Brilliant, thank you.
That's all right. The reason why ideally you do want them on LinkedIn is if you were to write a recommendation for me on my profile, then the next time all of your connections go onto LinkedIn, in their timeline or in the notifications, they'll see a notification that says you've written something nice about Anthony. Okay? Bit like an email campaign, most people will ignore it. Okay? But if I'm lucky, a handful of people will go, hang on a second, what's he been writing? I like this chap, what has he been saying? And they'll click on what you've put, and they might read the testimonial that you've written for me. And if I'm really lucky, one or two will get all the way to the bottom and click on my picture and go, God, this guy sounds good. Let me check him out. Yeah? And are we all vain enough to admit we look at who's been looking at us on LinkedIn? Yeah? So I use that as a reason or a trigger to pick up the phone to people. So if I can see a second level connection to somebody who's just written me a testimonial who looks at me, as long as I don't see the word recruitment anywhere in their job title, I will then phone them up and say, hey, sorry for the random phone call, but I was on LinkedIn this morning and I can see that you found my profile and that you're connected with Richard, who wrote me that lovely testimonial. Can I ask, is that how you found me? And all I'm trying to do is join up the breadcrumbs to say, look, you've been looking at me, I'm just curious of how you found me, and I'm reinforcing that good news story. Okay? And from there, what I would then say to them is, well, if it's okay with you, I might reach out so that we can connect on here, and at some point, I'd love to offer you a test drive so I can show you exactly what it is I do. Hello?
So every day I look at who's been looking at me on LinkedIn.
Yes?
And literally just pick up the phone, have that chat, just as you said, and then
You're 3 steps down the line with the potential of a coffee meet.
Yes, you could literally phone every single person who looks at you. I would typically be phoning people who, I haven't got a huge amount of spare time to be doing lots of calls like that, but I would be phoning more second level connections who I know are connected to clients who will vouch for me, and it stops me having to sell myself. That's the bit where most people cringe. They're usually really good at their job and that's why they've set up a company, but the really hard bit about pitching and selling yourself is telling people how good you are. So this stops you from having to do that by sharing what your clients say about you rather than you having to tell them how good you are.
Got it. Thanks.
No worries. I wait for a week, by the way, just in case you're curious, to see how many people will look at me who are a second level connection. After a week, I will I will take a picture of that testimonial and I will post it on my LinkedIn profile. I'll chuck it on Facebook. I may even tweet it out as well. Okay? And it will just say something loose like, great to get some more lovely feedback from another happy client. If you're an accountant that needs help with X, please get in touch and ask me about a test drive. Okay? You've probably noticed that I've been talking about test drives. I'm going to get onto that in just a second, but the car industry was so clever at realizing the power of referrals and recommendations. They cottoned on really quickly when eBay and Amazon and everything started. Car manufacturers, the biggest chunk of their website is now almost forums for clients and customer reviews and feedback. Because if you have decided that you are going to buy a BMW 1 Series, for example, you know the make, you know that you've decided that that's the one you want, you're going to go and look at what other people who've already bought that car say about it. Okay? It's what I would refer to as the top level of trust. You're going to trust what these people say about the car, right? Would you agree? Yeah? Middle level of trust, if you're going to buy a car, would be the Which magazine. Yeah, you know that neutral body that we think can't be bribed? Yeah? Who's at the bottom of the pile if you're going to buy a car on the trust pile?
Salesman.
The salesman, yeah. The one that, as you're reading the spec in the window, you'll see them out the corner of your eye, saunting across the place, usually in a shiny suit, and you'll end up nudging your other half and going, oh, brace yourself, here he comes. Yeah? Because you think their job is purely to sell you a car. Okay? Now, I've worked with a few garages and manufacturers, and I can tell you that they do pay commission for selling vehicles or selling cars and selling finance. Okay? They do make commission doing that, but do you know what they're actually targeted on? Test drives. You are 78% more likely to buy a car once you've driven it. Okay? What they really want is for you to have that experience of what it's like to drive this brand new car. Okay? So that you end up going, wow, I really want that. In fact, BMW are so clever, they don't just use test drives to attract new customers. They're really clever, they do it to get existing customers to come back as well. So a very good friend of mine works for BMW Finance up in Park Lane. And up until about 8 or so years ago, he said that they used to have to leave lots of messages for people to say, hey there, just calling from BMW to let you know that your finance is coming up for renewal at the end of the month. If you could please give me a call back on this number, I'd be really grateful. And then he'd leave his number. He said if they were lucky, 1 in 10 people would phone them back. And then they started to change the message slightly, which would be, hey there, Anthony, just calling from BMW, just to let you know that your 3 Series is coming up for renewal at the end of the month. I've got a brand new one here that if you want to borrow over the weekend and try out the latest version with all the extras, I'm more than happy to lend it to you for the weekend. Here's my number. Funnily enough, he said nearly 80% of people started to call them back. Okay, so test drives, you may now all be thinking, well, I don't sell cars, so what is my test drive? And I have done some stuff with people who do medical devices like stair lifts, and they went, so is a test drive getting them in the chair? And I don't know, that's not really a test drive. For if you're in insurance, the thing that you tend to do is you would provide a quote for somebody. You'll go and research the market, perhaps you might do assessing their risk, but really the test drive is, let me get you a quote. Okay, there was hands going about products in the middle of the room. So Lucy asked earlier on about products. So if you're selling products, for some people what you might do is send out samples. Yeah, allow people to try it out. Okay, if you are going to do stuff like that, then quite often I actually sometimes invoice for my freebies or my test drives. So you might want to say to somebody, well, look, if you're interested in, you guys do nutrition supplements, yeah? You might turn around and go, obviously you're interested, you're starting to look into using supplements. Why don't we send you a week of supplements that we think you should use and you don't have to pay for them on the condition that after 10 days you give us some feedback of how you feel after using those supplements. Yeah?
Is that sometimes referred to as a future upfront contract?
Yeah, you can have a,
So if in software, proof of concept.
Yeah.
It's better than a test.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to test software, they pay the AMDA.
Yeah.
So proof of concept, you have, so if it does these things.
Yeah. So what you're actually referring to there is more of a conditional close. So what you're saying is, okay, well, if I can show you this and you get this result, will you then buy the whole thing from me? Yeah. Which technically you can follow these same steps. What I'm getting at is, I just want to be able to demonstrate my value to people up front, generally before I've told them how much I charge. And that's because I charge a lot more than most sales trainers and speakers. So there's quite often, I get someone to go, what's your day rate? And I go, I don't really have a day rate, I do programs. And then when they calculate, oh, so in that program you're in 2 days, that's like over £1,000 a day. Well, the other guy's only quoted as 500. I went, yeah, because he's a sales trainer. That's how much sales trainers charge. It's about 500 quid a day. I'm not a sales trainer. I teach people some very specific soft skills that allow them to engage in conversation. I don't teach them sales tactics and Wellington closes and such and such. There's so many closes out there and tactics that you can use. But in my mind, most of us know we've seen these tactics before and we don't appreciate them when they're used on us. The reason that I quite like doing it is, one, it allows me to demonstrate some value, but it allows me to swap value with them, and it will stop people coming back and asking for more free value from me. Anybody got that, where you give somebody some free advice? Yeah? 2 weeks later, they phone back and go, I've just got one more quick question. Yeah? If you've invoiced them to say, well, I tell you what, some people would refer to it as a golden ticket campaign. So if you're a HR consultant, you help people fix problems, you need somebody to have a problem before they're going to really want to have a talk to you. So you might end up saying, well, we do a little test drive, is we have a golden ticket, which is 45 minutes of free consultancy. Okay, bring any problem to us and we will help you try and solve it and come up with something to fix it. Okay, but I would then send them an invoice to say this golden ticket has a value of £500 or £300 or whatever it might be. Okay, however, you don't have to pay that if you give me written feedback within X period of me giving you this advice. Yeah, so it just stops people coming back and asking for more. Okay. Make sense? I see a few people scribbling stuff down. Anybody struggling to figure out what their test drive would be? I'm going to go for the man in the middle just because you both put your hand up at the same time, but I'll come for you in a second.
Yep.
What do you do?
Graphic design, web design.
Okay.
Thank you.
Will you say that again?
Graphic design and web design.
Okay. So typically, I imagine if you meet a new client, let's just say somebody gets in touch and says, oh, we're thinking of rebranding.
Yeah.
Would you go and do a discovery meeting with them?
Yeah, generally speaking.
That's one of your test drives. So that's where you could turn around to them and say, well, if you're thinking about changing your branding, why don't we come and have a discovery meeting where we can find out a bit more about your business and your values and what it is you're trying to achieve with your new brand, and I can share a couple of case studies of what we've done with other people. Would that be useful? Do you think most people would have to say yes to that question?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
What you might end up doing is you might end up, if you really like this client, and they say, well, okay, this is great, could you just knock us something up because we've got another designer coming in and we want to compare the two.
We get that quite a lot.
Get that quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to go the extra mile and perhaps design them a logo or two or do something.
Well, I generally don't, but yeah, potentially, yeah, you could.
Yeah, you end up getting talked into giving them more and more value. So you have to gauge what level of test drive you're prepared to give people at what stage. So sometimes you have to gauge the size of the opportunity. Okay? A lot of companies have a stepping stone view of test drive. So the lowest level will be a tip sheet, which I tend to use at like a, you know, if you go to like a big business expo and there's lots of footfall, I don't want to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes chatting to each individual. What I want to do is give you something of value, swap details, and then do a follow-up with you later. Because the whole purpose of this is to capture the footfall. Okay, I would sometimes, if I talk to somebody and say, actually, this is what I do, can I drop off a couple of case studies of companies like you I've been working with? I might, if they've said, well, actually, yes, and we've got a bit of trouble at the moment with leaving voicemails for people. And I go, oh, okay, well, look, I'll send you a couple of case studies, but do you want me to send you a little tip sheet on how to leave voicemails? Yeah, and that way I can give them some value, but I'm not really swapping much time. And there's a great sales trainer called Steve Clark, who I used to do a lot of stuff with, but he now lives in the States. And I can remember somebody saying to him, they were like, Steve, you're a sales trainer, but we're a bit confused. You're giving away your best tips for free on your website. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? And he just looked back at them really confused and just went, well, what am I supposed to do? Give them my crap stuff and then see if they want to come back for more. Which was an interesting take on it, right? He just kind of said, look, if they're going to buy from you, they're going to buy from you. If they're not, they're not. But if they're sat on the fence and you can demonstrate great value to them, then there's a good chance you're going to whet their appetite. And I've even made people do test drives, even that have inquired and said, I'm ready to book you, you've been referred. And I say, well, I need to do a test drive first so that you can try out my advice. And they'll say, no, I just tell me how much it is, I just want to book it. I say, well, look, let me just give you some free advice first. And I always end up saying to them, the reason why I need you to do this is so that you understand the value of what I do before I give you my price. Because a lot of people are shopping around and just trying to find the best price. Go ahead, sir.
Right, my industry is property.
Okay.
People get repossessed. How do they test drive that?
How do you test drive? So, are you collecting money from people?
Stopping repossessions.
You're trying to stop repossession.
Trying to stop repossessions. So how do you capture the people who need help?
Okay. So I imagine if it was me, I would probably be talking to councils and stuff first, who I would refer to in your instance as a strategic partnership. And I'd be reaching out to them to find out anybody who is struggling financially, who is at risk of this, who you might be able to give some help.
GDPR, it's difficult.
Okay.
FOI, freedom of information, difficult.
Yep.
Gateways, barriers, it's difficult these days.
I have to be honest with you, if it's all right with you, let's have a chat at lunchtime. I've done a lot of stuff with JBW, Jamie Waller, he's the guy that's usually on the news when they have to evict gypsies and stuff from sites and things like that. He's generally the one. I did a lot of stuff with them. I have to be honest with you, I don't know if I could think off the top of my head exactly how to get there. There are certain GDPR things, but if you work with a council that wants to help their tenants, I think you can get round the GDPR by becoming a preferred supplier to them.
Difficult. I've been there. Yes.
I didn't say it was going to be easy. Sorry, were you expecting a silver bullet?
Try.
Okay. Sorry,
That's why I'm here.
If anybody wants that silver bullet that works every time, I don't have it. I'm really sorry. I do sniper sales, not scattergun. But you are right, it isn't going to be easy, otherwise everybody would be doing it. But all it really takes is a couple of good conversations with the right people, and stuff like that can happen.
Rapport building. Rapport building.
Rapport building, yeah. All comes down to rapport. So, those are the three phases that I always talk about. If it's all right with you, I'm just going to quickly, there's just one bit, only because, I'm not going to go into this too much, but because we've been talking about measuring stuff earlier on, okay, this is about what I would refer to KPIs that count that are around telephone activity. Okay? Most people, when they're measuring telephone activity, measure three main things: the number of calls that they make, the number of appointments that they book or quotes that they send out as a result of it, and then the number of deals that they close. Okay? These are all sensible things to measure. The problem that I have is people try and apply a logic that if you made 50 calls yesterday and you'd sent out 2 quotes, then if you made 100 calls today, you would send out 4 quotes. Does it actually work like that? Has anybody had the reality of actually picking up the phone and doing this kind of stuff? You have good days, you have bad days. The next thing as well is, anybody noticed, I don't know if you do appointment setting, that Thursday is usually a really popular, it's the day when most meetings get booked. Some people argue there's a psychology there, people are in a good mood on a Thursday because it's nearly Friday, but I actually believe the main reason for it is that most people who are targeted on setting appointments have broken the back of the week. They've got to Thursday and they've gone, oh, I'm behind target. And basically, anybody that they talk to who is friendly enough and willing to let them into their office to have a coffee, regardless of whether there's an imminent need, they are going to book that appointment. Yeah? So I work with loads of people, and basically the goal is to get more appointments, and I end up having to say to them, I'm not going to help you get more appointments until I can get your conversion ratio up. Because I'm basically going to add to the problem if you're not converting a high enough percentage of them. Okay? It's not about throwing enough mud at the wall and seeing what will stick. Okay? Unless you're an e-commerce type business and you are flooding your website with lots of traffic, and eventually some of them will buy. Okay? But I think most people in here, a lot of them are offering services. You're quite small businesses. I don't need a huge number of clients. Okay? I'm quite selective in who I will actually work with, and I say no to a few people as well, which I've been told I'm stupid to do, but there are certain people, I don't know about you, but there are some people I just don't want as a client. I've had them many years ago and realised why I don't want them. And then I noticed that most of the ones that are a pain in the backside found me, whereas my favourite clients are all ones that I've pretty much gone out and found myself, and I've made sure I've got on their radar. So for me, my test drive could be sending them a book copy of my book. It might be giving them half an hour of advice if I do a coaching call, or a small group Skype video call where I can help people figure out some of their biggest objections or challenges on the telephone. Okay? I personally could send out footage of me speaking on stage. There's actually somebody in the room today who hopefully is going to book me to speak, but hadn't seen me speak before. So it was great to come and do this event and be able to say to Richard, do us a favour, okay? So think about this and what your test drives are going to be so that you can push people through your sales cycle. And that's the bit that I really want to get at. You probably can't read too much of this, but the main thing you really need to know is the grade or the point system. This is a thing that I get everybody to create. This is what I would refer to as your sales cycle points, okay? So sales cycle points represent each step in your sales cycle that takes them through identifying who the right person is to speak to, all the way through to doing work and getting a testimonial out the other end. So the generic point system that I give everybody is, for 1 point, you need to find out who is the decision maker in that business, which you can often do just by doing a quick LinkedIn search and finding a list of names. You could probably score 20 points just by finding 20 names and copying and pasting them into a spreadsheet or onto your CRM. Okay? To score a second point, in my mind, you actually have to speak to that person. Now, bear in mind, I am slightly biased because I am the telephone assassin, but if you send them, if it's somebody who has no idea who you are, they haven't inquired, if you leave them a voicemail or you send them an email, that is worth -1 point. You will decrease the chances of them taking your phone call next time because they will start to form a negative association with either your name or your company. Okay? So for your second point, you do actually need to speak to people. And usually what will happen is they go, oh yeah, I am the HR manager, but I don't look after training. You need to speak with Sally in the such and such department. And you might get passed from pillar to post, but you need to speak to that right decision maker. Okay? Once I've spoken to that decision maker, all I really want to do is get them to agree for me to drop off my pizza menu. So for my third point, all I want them to do is to agree for me to send over a couple of case studies or testimonials that prove I'm credible and share some feedback from existing clients. Okay? Nice and simple. In most instances, if you are proactively reaching out, and even with inquiries, people inquire sometimes a bit too soon. So sometimes you have to make it clear, even if they've inquired, you're just dropping off the pizza menu, you're just letting them know what's available, you're just trying to build rapport and start to build up your credibility. Because when they're ready, if you're credible and they like you, they will buy from you. Okay? Now, just so that there is no confusion, the dropping off of a pizza menu is in the telephone call itself, not in what you're going to send them. Okay? That's where a lot of people will twist my words after my training. A week later, somebody will go, oh yeah, I dropped off 20 pizza menus last week. And I go, brilliant, and did you set up your follow-up calls? They went, no, I just phoned reception and said we were sending out case studies. And I went, you didn't send them to info@emails, did you? They go, yeah. That is not dropping off a pizza menu. The pizza menu drop-off is actually in the conversation itself. And as I said at the very beginning, the email is to create a paper trail of the conversation that we've had, and for you to be able to send tip sheets or case studies to prove your credibility. Okay? Before you get off of that call, for a fourth point, I would be setting up when I'm next going to speak to these people. Because the fact that we've just established that they aren't looking to buy today and right now, they will usually say, yeah, happy for you to send it over, okay, but we're probably not going to be looking for 6 months or 3 months or whatever it might be. And I go, okay, perfect. Well, in which case, if it's all right with you, let me send you a couple of bits over. Can I check, will you get a chance to look at it over the next week or two? I always ask that question because I think a week or two is a very reasonable time frame to give somebody to look at an email, and the majority or default response is, oh yeah, I'm sure I will. Okay? So what I would then always say, you'll get slight variations, which could be, actually we've got a meeting on Friday, so I'll discuss it with my boss then. Or you might get, I'm really sorry, Anthony, I'm going on holiday to Turkey for 3 weeks next week. Could we speak, like, it's going to be at least a month before I get to look at it. Okay? But generally, majority of people will say, yes, happy, yeah, I'm sure I'll get a chance to look at it in 2 weeks. And what I say to them is, I make them feel like I'm leaving it with them. I say, well, in which case, let me leave the ball in your court, like I'm going to leave the ball in their court. If you've got any urgent questions, concerns, anything else you want to know, please don't hesitate to come back to me. But if it's all right with you, so I don't forget about you, I'm going to make a note to give you a call in 2 weeks' time if we've not spoken, just to make sure it got through your spam filter, just clarify any little bits that I've attached, and at that stage, you can then tell me when you think is a good time for me then to get back in touch again to give you a test drive. That sound feasible? Would you all be happy, comfortable saying that kind of thing to people? Yeah? So your fourth point is basically getting them to say, yes, I'm happy for you to call me in 2 weeks if you haven't heard from me. And if they are genuinely interested in what it is you've spoken to them about, which they should be if you've done a bit of research and you've told them what you do, okay, they have no issue in you following it up. If you try that line on somebody after you've prematurely elaborated on them and then they've asked you to send an email because they were too polite to hang up on you, okay, if you try that, can I call you in 2 weeks? They'll go, no, honestly, if we're interested, we'll call you. Which is just making double sure you know we'll call you. You know what that means, right? Too polite to hang up on you, we'll call you. Okay, so there's your fourth point. Your fifth point may be actually booking and doing that follow-up call. Okay, in fact, for some people, your fifth point could be send that email. You're off the call now, let's make it an admin type thing. Your fifth point could be send them that personalised email to say, lovely chatting with you, thanks for taking the time to speak. As promised, here's 2 case studies of other accountants just like you who I've been working with recently, and also a tip sheet which may help some of your team when it comes to leaving voicemails or whatever it might be. Okay? Your sixth point, or the next point after that, is going to be making that phone call and speaking to them. You want to follow them up and basically just say to them, and when I follow it up, I always say to people, I'm just double checking it got through your spam filter. Okay? I don't say, have you read it? Because if you ask them if they've read it and they haven't, they feel bad, or they feel like you're being impatient. So I usually say, well, I haven't heard from you. I'm assuming there was either no questions or perhaps it didn't even get through your spam filter. Okay, so I just ask if it's come through yet, and most people will say, oh yeah, I've got it, I've flagged it, I've not had a chance to read it properly yet. Really common answer. And I go, okay, well look, if it's all right with you, I'll happily take you through some of the highlights, but what I'd really like to do is see if I could set up a test drive so I can show you exactly how what we do could help you guys. It looks like this, and I will then tell them, I'm going to get you on a Skype call, I'm going to send you some copies of my book, or I'm going to do something. Okay, that would be my next point, is getting them to agree to take the test drive with me. Okay, once they've done the test drive, in some instances I might invoice them for it. Okay, just to make sure that if I do you a test drive, you're going to give me some feedback at the end of it if you don't buy from me. Yeah? And just so you know, if you do a test drive for somebody who doesn't buy from you and they got great value and write you a testimonial, that's a great success story that you can go and share with somebody else. Right? People don't tend to write a testimonial to go, Anthony came and did some work for me for free, and it was really useful when we implemented it, and our conversion ratio went up by X and blah, 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 blah. What they say is, I spent an hour with Anthony, and this was the result from our implementation. Okay? So again, a lot of people say, particularly because I talk about this on stage, oh, really good talk, really useful, I'm going to write you a testimonial. And I kind of go, please don't do it yet. And they go, well, why not? And I said, yeah, it's useful to get recommendations as a speaker, but people book me because I'm an expert at what I do, and my clients don't care if I made you feel warm and fuzzy today. They care about whether or not, when you implemented my advice, did it work? Are you making more money out of it? Are you closing more deals? Is your conversion going the right direction? That's really what people are interested in with what I do. Okay, your point system will go all the way through until you've delivered the work, okay, and you should even have points in there for asking for testimonials as well. So these are what I would refer to as sales cycle points. Sales cycle points are what I would target your teams on, okay, and the beauty of doing this is that it means that even if people haven't achieved that end goal, you can still give them a pat on the back for adding value into the pipeline. Okay, and that's what a lot of people actually need, is a pat on the back rather than a kick up the backside. But what Lucy was alluding to earlier on is, once you start monitoring the stats, okay, you don't really need to know much about the numbers. What you want to know is about the anomalies and what's dropping and what's not. So for me, I always say to people, the best thing about this point system is it becomes really, really clear really quickly where the bottlenecks are in your pipeline. If you're getting stuck on 3 or 4 points, or you're getting stuck on 6 points, it's very easy for me to then be able to go, okay, brilliant, so you need to ask the closing question. Okay, you need to open the door, you need to be making more calls. Okay, but the bottlenecks will show you where the skill gaps are, and if you've got a few people in the office that have different skills, you can pair people up so that they do the bit that they enjoy and that they're good at. Yeah? But if unfortunately you're the only one who's doing it and you've got some skill gaps, then you can engage somebody like me who can help you fix and tweak those things. Okay, I'm not going to go into any more detail, but there is something called bonus points, which I would never target my team on, but you can earn bonus points by doing stuff, by gathering information that either helps you build rapport or helps you tailor your quote or approach. Okay, so if you're an IT company and somebody says, I want you to come and visit us, we need help with our IT, it's useful to know how many sites they've got, for example, or how many employees they've got, but it's not vital. Okay. If I talk to coaching clients, I always make a note of the names of their partners, even dogs. Like, there's one guy who, the first time I spoke to him, there was a dog barking in the background, and he just went, I'm really sorry, that's Benji. He'll shut up in a minute. My wife's going to take him for a walk. The next time I spoke to him, the dog was barking in the background, and I went, is that Benji I can hear? He went, yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm just going to close the kitchen door. Bear with me. And it was just a lovely way to kind of break the ice. And quite often, bonus points are about building rapport with people, because just in case you didn't realise, everybody has the same favourite topic. It is themselves. So I'm going to wrap up, but there's just one final thing that I really want to share, which I'm hoping will make a massive difference to anybody who's scared about picking up the phone. Okay, there is one quick golden rule, which is you must get permission at the beginning of every call, okay, to speak. You must get permission to speak at the beginning of the call. So I'm assuming many of you do that already. Would you say, are you free to speak? Are you okay to chat for a minute? Are you okay to talk? That kind of thing? Absolutely fine, and if that's working for you, crack on, okay? When I phone people, what I tend to do is I would phone them up, and if I was phoning Richard, I'd go, hey there Richard, my name's Anthony Stears, I just wanted to chat to you for a couple of minutes, but I know you're really busy, and perhaps now isn't the best time to speak. Is there a better time to call you back? And I phone up with the assumption that now is not a good time to call back, because it tells them one of two things. The last thing they hear is me making it very easy for them to get out of this call, so they think I either can't possibly be in sales, or if I am, I'm rubbish at it. Either way, I'm not that much of a threat, okay? But you'll typically find that if you phone 10 people and you're having a bad day, 7 of them won't even be in the office. 2 out of 10 will say something like, actually, Anthony, I'm just about to go into a meeting, or I'm just finishing off a tender document. Could you call me back at 3 o'clock? Could you give me a call on Friday? Okay? But at least 1 out of 10, or at least 1 out of 3 of the ones that answer will say, well, go on then. I've got 2 minutes now. What's the call about? And the beauty of that is you've created curiosity in why you have called, as opposed to interest in what you're calling about, which is where the premature elaboration thing tends to come in. So I'm hoping you all found it useful. Sorry I didn't get to answer everybody's question, but we're going to be doing a Q&A a little bit later on. In which case, I'm going to hand you back over to Richard, but thank you for paying attention, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Anthony Stears, everyone! Woo, 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 woo! All right.
There we go.
The assassin.